Hey guys, this is Jeremy from 78 Productions. I'm with my wife, Ashley. You met her on a previous one for Thanksgiving. And we've been talking about youth ministry and marriage throughout this entire week. A lot of great stuff, what it means to be in ministry as a woman with marriage, to have kids in youth ministry and trying to focus on the whole family, what happens when you're in marriage and you're both in ministry, how to evaluate where you're at in your ministry as well as in your marriage. So there's a lot of good things going on with this, but I purposely left out some of the best ones for at the end. You'll have to forgive me because I just took a marriage and family ministry counseling just today at Denver Seminary, and so there's a lot of things swimming in my head. But three of the best things I really love about integrating ministry and marriage together. The first one is the idea that we need to really be examples for the students that we work with. So we have our own children. We're gonna have our own child pretty soon. And when we have our child, I always love the idea of showing affection in front of your kids. Let them see what that means, hugging, kissing, whatever that is. And then also the idea of the opposite with the confrontation. So you have those arguments, not screaming battles, not anything that's inappropriate as far as arguing, but those disagreements, you don't see eye to eye, you have to hash it out, figure it out, what's the best solution, and actually come to a resolution. And if I do something wrong in that process, I have to apologize, same back, that they see that how that's modeled, that they're able to do that in front of you with your kids, and then not only with your kids, but then you also do that in front of your ministry kids, that they get to see that because they might not have the examples.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just like at school, if a kid doesn't know how to add or subtract, you're not just going to show it to them once and expect them to understand how to do it. You have to constantly be doing that model before they can do it appropriately.
Yeah, and I had a youth worker that was my youth worker, and he loved to talk about affection and all that, but he never actually did it in front of me, which was interesting because the wife was very reserved. And so I actually went up to him and said, "You talk about kissing and dating and all that stuff all the time," and I said, "But I've never seen you kiss." Half a second later, they were kissing. So I think that's really good. Mm-hmm. The next one was the idea that your family is a priority, and I think I mentioned this, but didn't put a lot of emphasis on that. But I personally, us together, say that God is number one. Anything else is second to that. But then second is family, and third is job. And so for those that maybe don't serve directly in ministry, that's easy to understand. There's that huge boundary there that things are different. But with family being a priority over ministry, I think you really need to be able to section out what's your calling, what is God telling you right now to do. Maybe that means moving like we did. We had to actually move because that was our calling. But then when we get here and do ministry, ministry itself is not God's calling, and family takes precedence over that. And just say, I'm going to be home at 6 o'clock with the kid coming. I need to do that because the child's impressionable. I need to honor my spouse, and stuff like that.
I agree. I don't have much to say about that.
Yeah. And then the last one is I talked about the idea of boundaries with spouses, and that we need to have this idea that we can never force them to do ministry because they did not get hired for that. And even beyond that, if they never work a single day with teenagers, never actually ever say a word to teenagers, great, I love it, because you were hired to do this job, they weren't. But even if they don't say a single word, I think they are the best volunteers that you guys will ever have. I always say Ashley is my best volunteer, regardless of however many hours she puts into it. She's my best volunteer.
I think it's hard not to feel the pressure to be at any and all events, just because you are the wife. And a lot of people may not know that I work my own job, and that takes a lot of time too. So just understanding that whatever you can do above and beyond is great, but if you can't, then not to feel guilty about that.
Mm-hmm. And it was interesting when we first were dating. I was doing ministry in Ohio, and I think I've talked about this before, that it flopped, and it flopped pretty hard. No students came for the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth one. The first time I had expectations of how many students should be there, and everything that it was really a personal defeat kind of thing, that I thought people liked me and they didn't. So I came home bawling, and I went to see her that night while we were dating, and basically she had to deal with me as I was just completely done emotionally. I had nothing to offer her, and I was completely distressed about the ministry. Where is this going to head? All these different things. So even if they never talk to you, they still have to deal with the emotional repercussions if a teenager decides that they don't want to live anymore, or a female says that she got pregnant, parents that just berate you, whatever it is. You can try as best as you can to compartmentalize, but you still take that home. I think that the spouse really has to deal with that, and I think that's why they are the best volunteers we have, because they put in countless hours. I know when we go watch movies, sometimes the reason we watch a certain movie is because, oh, that's a good ministry movie. And then I analyze it, and she has to deal with the fact that I'm analyzing this movie for youth ministry, and it's just, we really need to compartmentalize, but it'll never ever be perfect. You guys are always the best support system we have, and I think that that's the best reason why we do ministry as well as we do. I think seminary, who cares? How good is your senior pastor? Who cares? How many good volunteers do you have? Who cares? If you don't have a good spouse there to help you, good support system, I think that's key. And I think that's what you guys do as far as being the best volunteers.
Mm-hmm. I think it's just like any other job too. You come home, you bring that home. I teach special ed. There's a lot that comes home with me every night too. Not as far as work, but just as far as emotional baggage, that kind of thing. So it's a give and take too. You learn from that. You learn to try and leave things at home, but especially when you're dealing with kids, there's a lot of you know, it's not like the business world where you can just leave your reports at work. You bring that home. There are a lot of kid issues, things that aren't fair to young kids and kids who are older. Hard to kind of let that go. So I think that's something we both struggle with and are working on that too.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say as far as interacting with your spouses, the idea of priority with family over ministry, the idea of modeling good relationships in front of students as well as your own kids, and then the idea of them being the best volunteer you can be. So leave some comments below, and we'll see you guys next week.